What? What? Chapter 631. What? Terry was astounded to see that his attack had been stopped. After taking off the weights, his strength and speed would have multiplied tremendously. And to win against Dustin, he even exposed his greatest weapon, his sword. All of this was to ensure his victory against Dustin. However, despite going at Dustin at full force, the latter managed to stop his attack with nothing but 2 fingers. Was Dustin even human? I am possible. Terry's eyes widened as he lost his mind. He began swinging his sword at Dustin non-stop, and the force whipped the air in the arena, causing dust to engulf the place. Terry's continuous blows brought more gouges to the ground until the floor resembled a spider web. Die. You have to die. Terry roared. His attacks picked up speed and became more lethal. Dustin, who was unfazed by the onslaught, dodged and avoided Terry's attacks by twisting his upper body. His feet were still firmly planted on the ground. He would only block attacks with his hands when there was nowhere for him to dodge. The battle in the ring was getting more intense, yet the audience was completely befuddled. Due to Terry and Dustin's high speed, all they could see were shadows and after images of the 2 of them. And because of how dangerous Terry's sword aura was to regular martial artists, the crowd had no choice but to scuttle backward and watch the battle from afar. Claudia, I can't see anything. Can you? Maggie struggled to identify the 2 men. I can't either. They are both way stronger than me. Claudia shook her head. She was still a high-level martial artist, and although she was much stronger than the average martial artist, she still had a long way to go compared to divine-level martial artists. In fact, she was nothing compared to them. Terry should be the one with the upper hand, right? Maggie asked tentatively. Judging from the magnitude of the destruction, it seems like it. Claudia nodded. Terry's sword skill is ruthless, and he also has an ace card Tempest of the 18 swords. If he uses that, no one would be able to stop him. Great. Maggie was thrilled to hear that. Although she didn't have the right to learn that technique, she had heard of it before. It was the Doyle family's greatest treasure. It had been around since the family's foundation and was to be used as a last resort when someone had been cornered with no way of escaping. There were rumors that the sword technique in the manuscript increased in power at each level, and so far, no one has ever withstood the last level before. Maggie believed that as long as Terry used it, he would win the battle easily. Fuck. I can't even tell who's who anymore. Zeke stood on tiptoes and peered over the crowd's head. Gordon, do you think Terry will win? Of course, he will. Gordon answered confidently. Dustin might be skilled, but he's still a country bumpkin with no power. Terry is different. As the future head of the Doyle family who's received training from the greatest masters, I'm sure he still has a card up his sleeve that he's hiding. That's true. Zeke nodded his head, relieved. As a martial arts family, the Doyle family had a powerful legacy and many martial arts manuscripts that could help one easily defeat their opponent. Chapter 632. As long as Terry wanted to, it shouldn't be hard for him to defeat Dustin. Sir Paul, who do you think will win? Hector suddenly turned his attention to Paul, who sat in the middle. The one with a 90% chance, Paul answered with a smile, his eyes crinkling. 90%. Phil smiled. You've got a good eye, Sir Paul. You could tell that my son had an ace up his sleeve, so he should be able to win. Phil had been getting worried that his son might lose, but Paul's words reassured him. As a grandmaster martial artist, no one would dare question what Paul said, so if Paul said that there's a 90% winning chance, it must be true. Although there was 10% left, it was more than enough for him. Paul glanced at Phil, who was full of confidence, but didn't say anything, a knowing smile on his face. Tempest of the 18 swords. A voice bellowed from the platform as the air turned heavy. Instantly, the entire platform began to shake as cracks spread everywhere. Terry is finally going to use his best move. That's the end of that bastard. Maggie shouted animatedly. One doesn't use Tempest of the 18 Swords unless extremely necessary, but when they do, their opponents will definitely die. Claudia narrowed her eyes. Let's see what you'll do now. Gordon and his friend's eyes were glued to the ring, not wanting to miss seeing Dustin get defeated. Are things finally going to end now? Phil smirked. Although Dustin had surprised him several times. At times, the man was still no match for his son. As long as you withstand this blow, you'll still have a chance to turn things around. Good luck. Hector's fists clenched as he silently prayed for Dustin. Natasha and her sister were also waiting anxiously after hearing that Dustin only had a 10% chance of living. You've got to hold on, Sir Rhys. We're depending on you. Nelson and his men were worried for Dunton. They knew that if their leader lost, the Doyle family was going to completely get rid of the gang. Tempest of the 18 Swords. It's time for you to die. Terry shouted. He gathered all his strength into a single strike and swung his blade toward Dustin. Bang! The cracked arena began crumbling. Dust and debris flew into the air, making it hard for people to keep their eyes open. After some time, the dust finally settled, and only one man was standing among the wreckage. Terry. We won. The Doyle family was overjoyed to see this, and the audience began cheering. You're amazing, Mr. Terry. No wonder he's ranked 13th on the Heavenly Immortals. Today's battle was eye-opening. He is indeed a genius. The audience was grinning widely as they sang praises to him. Terry smiled from where he stood atop the wreckage. Suddenly, he doubled over and spat out a mouthful of blood before collapsing to the ground. Chapter 633. The audible thud when Terry fell to the ground silenced everyone, effectively cutting off all laughter and cheers. The crowd shared dismayed looks, unable to comprehend what just happened. What was going on? Didn't Terry win? Why did he spit out blood? Had it merely been a narrow win? Just as everyone was stuck in disbelief, a silhouette slowly walked out of the ruined arena. Even the dust in the air seemed to disperse and create a path for him. When the person reached the top of the platform, the audience could finally see Dustin's handsome face. Dustin stood proudly with his hands in his pocket as he studied his unconscious opponent calmly. Meanwhile, everyone's jaws dropped. They thought that Terry had been the one who won, but things have completely changed. Terry was lying on the ground, injured, while Dustin was completely unscathed. It was obvious who the winner was. No way. Terry Doyle lost. Holy smokes. Salerno's martial art genius and the 13th person on the Heavenly Immortals lost to nobody. Who the hell is that guy? How was he able to injure Mr. Terry? That's insane. There was an uproar as everyone stared at Dustin like he was a monster. Although it was hard for them to come to terms with the fact that Terry had lost, what they saw wasn't a lie. Terry had been completely destroyed. Impossible. There's no way Terry would lose to that guy. My eyes must be deceiving me. Maggie shook her head and rubbed her eyes, trying to deny what she saw. She refused to believe that a mere nobody had taken down the genius in their family. When did he become so strong? Claudia's eyes widened in shock. She thought that Dustin was just a normal divine-level martial artist who could only defeat someone of Bennett's caliber. Instead, he had completely triumphed over Terry. Had she been looking down on the wrong person this entire time? He won. How is that possible? Gordon was aghast, his eyes filled with disbelief. He actually survived. Zeke was sweating buckets now. He wasn't bluffing. Zoe gulped, unable to remain calm. Natasha wasn't wrong. He is different. Adriana mumbled to herself, her eyes fixed on Dustin. He won. Our leader won. After getting over the shock, Nelson leaped up and began hugging his men. From now on, the gang was going to become more powerful than ever. Sis, he won. Dustin won. Ruth cheered excitedly. Of course, he did. There's no way my man would lose. Natasha's shock turned to pride, and she lifted her head haughtily. All she hoped for was for Dustin to come back to her safely, but she never imagined he would give her such a big surprise. I knew there was more to that guy. Hector smiled, relieved. Although he was sure that Dustin came prepared, it was still difficult to defeat Terry. I am possible. How did my son lose? Phil was devastated. He spun around and looked at Paul. Sir Paul, didn't you say that my son had a 90% chance of winning? How did things come to this? Chapter 634. I think you misunderstood something here, Paul responded calmly. I said Dustin had a 90% chance of winning. Your son only had 10. What? Phil stiffened. It turned out that everything had been in his head. Still, he couldn't understand or accept how nobody like Dustin was able to defeat his son, who was a genius. Mr. Doyle, thank you for Tempest of the 18 Swords, Hector suddenly said, causing Phil's face to darken. Phil thought that today's battle would work in their favor by boosting their reputation. However, not only had his son lost the battle, he also lost their family heirloom. It was a devastating loss. Dustin's victory also taught everyone something. There was always someone far stronger than you, even if you were the strongest person around. Also, from today onward, Balerno Martial Arts would see a dark horse, someone more talented and stronger than Terry. Useless fools. Tyler Grant, who stood amidst the audience wearing a mask, humphed and walked away. He hid his identity because he thought he'd get to see an amusing show, yet Terry had been useless and couldn't even defeat a pretty boy like Dustin. It was such a waste of time. Back at the wreckage, Dustin looked at Terry below him and reminded, "You've lost. Remember what I said earlier. Your family better stay out of my way from now on." He turned to walk off the stage. No. I haven't lost yet. Gritting his teeth, Terry clambered to his feet wildly. Go to hell. Locking his eyes on Dustin's back, Terry grabbed his sword and thrust it toward Dustin. Watch out. Natasha cried out, but it was too late. Terry's attack was too quick and silent, making it hard to detect. So, before anyone realized what was going on, the tip of Terry's sword was already pressing into Dustin's back. Ha ha. I'm still the winner in the end. Terry cackled. Quickly, his laughter stopped and his smile froze when he realized that his sturdy blade hadn't even hurt Dustin. It didn't even impale the man's flesh. Terry wanted to turn things around. What a joke. What do you think you're doing? Dustin snapped, slowly turning his head. This was an open battle where everyone had seen the results, so how dare Terry try to pull a fast one on him? Were all Doyle family members so shameless? Die. Die. Rot in hell. True energy burst forth from Terry and into his sword as he tried to piece through Dustin's body, and the blade eventually bent under the force. Still, no matter how hard Terry tried, he just couldn't injure Dustin. Fool. Dustin humphed. He stopped going easy on Terry and planted his fist into Terry's abdomen. There was a bang at Terry's abdomen, and his core shattered to pieces. Terry flew backward from the force like a ragdoll, blood spurting everywhere. It caused an uproar among the crowd when his body landed in the audience zone, and the Doyle family's blood started boiling after seeing how Terry's core was destroyed. Chapter 635. After failing to sneak up on Dustin, Terry was thrown into the air, where he landed right beside Phil, who was infuriated to see his son injured and bleeding uncontrollably. You piece of shit. How dare you hurt my son? Are you blind or something? He snuck up on me, so I merely defended myself, Dustin answered. Nonsense. Phil yelled. The winner hadn't been determined yet. You were the one who left your back open to your opponent, so it was fair and just. Although his son had been in the wrong, there was no way he could admit that now. Fine. Since the winner hasn't been determined yet, there shouldn't be a problem since I attack him normally. Dustin retorted. Of course, there is. You deliberately injured my son. Phil seethed. This is how the martial world works. You're putting your life at stake when you accept a challenge. Your son got hurt because he wasn't strong enough. Your family is a martial arts family. Don't tell me you're sore losers. Dustin sneered. You. Phil's blood boiled. You sneaky bastard. Maggie stood up. Don't waste time arguing with him, Uncle Phil. He destroyed Terry's core. We must make him pay. That's right. There's no way we'd let him walk out after hurting our family's genius. That brat is a danger to society. We need to get rid of him. The Doyle family yelled, their eyes showing their animosity toward Dustin. Terry had been their hope, and he even had a chance at becoming a grandmaster martial artist. To learn that his core had been destroyed and he had lost all his powers was a huge blow to the family. It's fine that he snuck up on me and tried to kill me, but I'm not supposed to defend myself. You guys are shameless. Dustin jeered. How dare you? The Doyle family was flustered and humiliated. Take that bastard down now. Phil bellowed. Anyone who approaches me will die. Dustin glanced around the room coolly. The Doyle family fighters shuddered when they met his gaze. How were they supposed to win against someone who defeated Terry Doyle? Why are you guys panicking? There are so many of us, and only one of him. We'll defeat him, no matter how long it takes. Take him down. Phil ordered once more. Wait. Hector suddenly stood up. Mr. Doyle, accidents are normal during duels. Don't you think that you're overreacting? Precisely. A loss is a loss. How could you demand revenge? In public too. That's awful. Ruth was displeased. Aren't you worried about what people will think when they find out that such a well-established family was manipulating the truth and bullying others? Natasha humphed. Mr. Harmon, this is my family's affair. It has nothing to do with you. Phil frowned. Well, to tell you the truth, Dustin is an honored guest in our family. So our family wouldn't let such unjust treatment slide, Hector responded calmly. This is going to turn into a blood feud. Are you sure you want to get caught up in this mess? Phil demanded. Mr. Doyle, everyone here saw what happened. If you insist on doing things your way, I'm afraid you'll incur their wrath. Hector tried to knock some sense into Phil. Everyone here was either a celebrity or a well-known martial artist. If the Doyle family were to retaliate unjustly in front of everyone, their reputation would be ruined. All right, that's enough. Chapter 636. Paul, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke up. Mr. Doyle, there are rules that should be kept. Since your son was the one who accepted the challenge, he should accept whatever consequences there are. But, my son, Phil wanted to protest but stopped when he met Paul's icy glare. Do you plan to be condemned by everyone? No, sir. Phil gritted his teeth and lowered his head. In terms of status and power, the Doyle family was no match for Paul. Mr. Doyle, you should send your son to the Stenere order immediately. He might still have hope if Dr. Watkins takes a look at him, Paul reminded. Hurry. Get the car ready. Coming to his senses, Phil gathered his son into his arms and dashed out of the arena, the rest of the Doyle family members following closely behind. Receiving treatment was the most important thing right now. Hi. Mind if I have a word with you? Paul turned his attention to Dustin. It would be my honor. Dustin nodded and followed Paul out the door. Once the two men were gone, gossip rose once more. What an outstanding battle. I know, right? To think that the person ranked 13th on the Heavenly Immortals lost to nobody. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. I'm sure that the leader of the Flame Dragon Gang is going to become famous after this. As he should. Such a talented individual should join Greendust. Don't be silly. Autumn Wind has called dibs on that guy. I'm willing to do anything for him to become my disciple. Are you forgetting about the Boulder Thorn? You guys are too late. Sir Paul has already made the first move. What? Oh. That sneaky geezer. What are you waiting for? Go after them. After processing everything that happened, the elders and leaders of different guilds hurriedly chased after Dustin, not wanting to be left behind. After all, it was extremely rare to find someone as monstrously talented as Dustin. As long as they paid him some attention, he would surely become a grandmaster martial artist, so all of them were now clamoring for his attention. Because Dustin had total victory over the battle, Terry's title as a genius had been swept under the rug, and the Doyle family's reputation was in tatters after being known as sore losers. On the other hand, Dustin's reputation seemed to have soared thanks to this incident, and there was now a new genius in Belerno. The Flame Dragon Gang's reputation also skyrocketed after the battle as skilled fighters from all over the place scrambled to join the gang. Although they still weren't as powerful as the other famous guilds, they were considerably strong in Millsburg. In time, they would surely become much stronger. Chapter 637. Outside the Doyle family gates, a Maybach revved up and drove off, successfully shaking off the group of people who were chasing after them. Thank God I moved fast, or I wouldn't even have the chance to talk to you. Paul turned around and looked at the annoyed group behind them, impressed by his foresight. It's not that bad. Dustin was puzzled. You don't seem to understand your value yet. Paul shook his head, chuckling. Being able to defeat Terry Doyle has already proven how powerful and talented you are. There are less than 5 people in Belerno who could even be on par with you, so countless guilds are desperately trying to rope you in. TSK. What a bother. I should have kept a low profile. Dustin sighed. He had only challenged Terry to warn the Doyle family not to mess with him. He didn't expect him to invite so many people to watch the battle in an attempt to boost their reputation. Still, the Doyle family has shot itself in the foot since he was the one who ended up receiving the boost in reputation. You're an interesting fellow. Others would die for that fame, yet you don't want it at all. Paul smiled. Things like fame can't even fill my belly. I'm sure that once word spreads, I'll have people coming up to me to challenge me to a duel. Aren't I just making things troublesome for myself? Dustin shook his head. It's hard to find someone who looks at fame and fortune so lightly nowadays. Paul studied Dustin appreciatively. Don't flatter me, Sir Paul. I'm just a normal person. I don't have any great ambitions, so whatever you want to say, just tell it to me straight. Dustin changed the topic. All right, then. I'll get straight to the point. Paul nodded. I wanted to talk to you about the Knighthood Society tournament. The Knighthood Society tournament. Dustin was confused. Every 3 years, there will be a Knighthood Society tournament between Belerno and Glenstead. The purpose of this tournament is to find new talents as well as observe how strong each side is. The outcome of the battle will determine the direction in which the alliance will grow for the next 3 years. The winning side has the right to call the shots and occupy more resources. Therefore, I hope that you can join the tournament as Belerno's representative, Paul explained. But why me? There are so many skilled fighters in Belerno. There's no way a youngster like me has the right to represent Belerno. Dustin was still puzzled. First of all, I have high hopes for you since you're a capable individual. Secondly, there's an age limit. Participants can't be more than 38 years old. Thirdly, each side has 5 slots. Terry Doyle was supposed to take one of them, and since you've injured him greatly, you'll have to take his place. Paul smiled. What? Dustin paled. He never thought things would get so bothersome after defeating Terry. This is a good chance for you, young man. Everyone who joins the tournament receives a hefty prize. And if you win, the Alliance will grant you one wish. Money, power, jewels, women, name it, you'll have it. Paul urged. Grant me a wish. Dustin pondered for a moment. He wasn't interested in money or power, but he did happen to need 2 rare precious herbs. With the Alliance's help, he might be able to find them more easily. Let me know what you need, young man. Don't be shy. Paul took advantage of this opportunity and began pressing. Sir Paul, have you ever heard of the 1,000-year green lotus and Chiuja? Dustin asked. 1,000-year green lotus? No, but I know who has Chiuja, Paul answered. Really? Who? Dustin's eyes lit up. That's a secret for now. Paul tried to entice Dustin. Of course, If you're willing to represent Belerno in the upcoming tournament, I'll let you know regardless of the tournament's results. I guess that means I don't have a choice. Chapter 638. Dustin chuckled bitterly. All right, I'll agree to it. It's just going to be a few fights anyway. There was no fight he couldn't win when it came to using his martial arts prowess. Paul smiled. Great. That'll be all. Dustin was curious. Sir Paul, since you've retired, why are you still worrying about matters regarding the martial arts alliance? Paul kept his smile. Even though I'm not with the alliance anymore, my heart still belongs to them. Not to mention, the current leader of the alliance is my disciple. I don't see anything wrong with helping him recruit talent. Sir Paul, I admire that you're a man of high integrity. Dustin nodded in acknowledgement. All right, there's no need for flattery. Where are you going next? I'll see you off. Back to the Flame Dragon Dojo. In the afternoon, inside Stoneray Valley at Mount Cloudcrest, Terry laid on an emerald bed. His complexion was pale, and he was sweating all over. A few physicians in white were carefully tending to his injuries. Phil stood at one side. He was anxious and hesitant to speak, fearing he might disrupt their work. After a long while, Terry's wound was finally sutured up and bandaged. Mr. Turner, how is my son? Phil finally asked when he saw that they had finished treating Terry. It's fortunate that you sent him here on time. Your son is safe for now. Nicholas wiped his sweat with his sleeves. Thank God. Phil breathed a sigh of relief. But he quickly followed up with another question. He's safe now, but would it affect his martial arts abilities? That's where the problem lies. Nicholas sighed and explained, his core is seriously damaged. It would be hard to get it healed. I doubt he will be able to recover his abilities. What? How can that be? Phil's expression fell. Mr. Turner, you have excellent medical skills. Can you please think of something? I'll pay you no matter how high the price. Mr. Doyle, my skills are limited. There's nothing I can do. Nicholas shook his head. If you can't do it, what about Dr. Lyndon Watkins? Can you please get him to treat my son? Phil was anxious. Dr. Watkins is in seclusion and refuses to meet anyone. Even if he did treat your son and heal his core, your son won't be able to recover his abilities immediately as they are lost. He would need to start all over. Nicholas was feeling truly helpless. Start all over. The blood drained from Phil's face when he heard the news. It took his son more than 20 years of hard work to reach where he was today. It would be too late to start all over again. He was now akin to a crippled man. Dad! Terry suddenly opened his eyes and cried out weakly. Quick! Get my mentor, Mr. Augustus Klein, here quickly. Only he can save me now. Phil's eyes brightened. That's right. I almost forgot about him. I'll contact him right away. Augustus Klein was one of the 5 ultimate grandmasters of Belerno. He possessed remarkable abilities and was seemingly invincible. With the appearance of such a revered figure, he would definitely turn the situation around. Dustin Rhys. When my mentor gets here, I'm going to make sure you are crushed into pieces. Terry growled menacingly. However, the intensity of his anger made him spit out blood, and he fainted on the spot. Chapter 639. That night, in the second-floor office of the Flame Dragon Dojo. Sir Rhys, you were so cool today. Not only did you show the Doyle family who's boss, but you also made the Flame Dragon gang famous all across Belerno. We have around 1,000 members now, and they all admire you greatly. Nelson poured Dustin a cup of coffee while he showered him with compliments. His excitement and elation were evident. He'd been worried that the Doyles would seize the opportunity and take revenge on him if Dustin lost. He didn't expect the gang leader to be so incredible. Against all odds, Dustin turned the tide and achieved a resounding victory over Terry. He had become famous through a single battle. That's enough, you've said that 1,000,000 times now. Can't you say something new? Dustin was speechless. Ever since Dustin's return, Nelson had been flattering him in various ways, singing all sorts of praises that Dustin could think of. If people didn't know any better, they would think Nelson was flirting with Dustin from the look on Nelson's face. You want something new? No problem. Nelson grinned as he said, Sir Rhys, did you know that after your victory, many talented individuals have sought to join our gang? I've tested out their skills, and every one of them is no ordinary talent. With a little training, they could turn out to be the backbone of our gang. If this continues, I believe the Flame Dragon gang would become Millsburg's largest gang within 3 years. Dustin nodded in response. Not bad. This is good news. But remember, quality over quantity. Don't recruit anyone with questionable characters. It would be advantageous to him if the Flame Dragon gang expanded well. However, he had to clearly plan out their expansion, lest it led to internal conflicts. No need to worry, Sir Rhys. I'm skilled in that area, I'll be able to tell their character from just one look. Nelson grinned confidently. He'd been part of the martial world for many years. While he didn't possess any extraordinary abilities, he was always right when it came to reading people. Oh, by the way, the most important task is finding the murderer. Make sure not to slack off in that regard, Dustin reminded him. My men have been working hard on investigating. I believe we will have results soon. Nelson turned serious. Dustin nodded. Okay. Let me know immediately if you get any news. You can go now. All right. Nelson left after responding. Suddenly, Dustin's phone rang. He took it out and saw that it was a call from Dahlia. The Nicholsons hated him terribly since he was the greatest suspect in James' death. With the current situation, he couldn't believe Dahlia was the one to call him first. He wondered if she had finally thought things through. Hello, Dahlia. Dustin answered immediately without hesitation. After a few seconds of silence, he heard an indifferent voice on the other line. I'd like to talk to Augustus Klein here quickly. Only he can save me now. Phil's eyes brightened. That's right. I almost forgot about him. I'll contact him right away. Augustus Klein was one of the 5 ultimate grandmasters of Belerno. He possessed remarkable abilities and was seemingly invincible. With the appearance of such a revered figure, he would definitely turn the situation around. Dustin Rhys. When my mentor gets here, I'm going to make sure you are crushed into pieces. Terry growled menacingly. However, the intensity of his anger made him spit out blood, and he fainted on the spot. Chapter 640. Evidence. Where is it? Dahlia was taken aback. It's with me now. It appeared that Dustin came prepared, as he took out 2 pieces of evidence. These are the autopsy results. This can prove that James was poisoned to death. While this black needle is the murder weapon. What? Dahlia examined it curiously. Dustin added, saying, if you don't believe me, you can get it tested personally. Although he had the evidence, it would be hard to convince her without finding the murderer. No need for that. I believe you. Dahlia's expression was solemn. To be honest, I know that you're not the murderer and that this has all been a misunderstanding. Dustin smiled. I'm happy that you think that way. I'm sorry for misunderstanding you. But please understand, I had no other choice. My brother's death has left me in pain. I feel so lost, and I don't know what to do. I'm scared that I will lose you too. I'm scared that we will become enemies. I'm scared of being alone. As she spoke, her eyes turned red. She lowered her head and choked back her tears. Her teary appearance looked pitiful. Anyone who saw her would pity her. It's all right. It's all in the past now. Dustin patted her shoulders in comfort. His actions seemed to shatter all her reservations, and she threw herself into his arms, her sobs intensified. She trembled uncontrollably as a steady stream of tears flowed down her cheeks. Dahlia finally released all the pent-up emotions that she had suppressed for so long. Dustin sighed. With both arms wrapped around her in an embrace, he inched closer to her and whispered words of comfort into her ear. It's okay to cry. It'll be all right once you cry it out. Oh, by the way, I have a secret to tell you. To be honest, I really did kill your brother. What? Dahlia froze, and she looked up in shock. What did you just say? You didn't hear me. Let me repeat myself, then. I murdered your brother, Dustin declared as he smiled. After a momentary daze, Dahlia shook her head furiously. No, it can't be. You must be lying. How could you be the murderer? I don't believe you. I couldn't bear to continue deceiving you, especially when I see you crying so miserably. So I thought I'd just tell you the truth, Dustin said calmly. Dustin, stop joking. You're not that kind of person, Dahlia denied it flatly. Do you really know me? Dustin countered. Why? Weren't you collecting evidence? Dahlia frowned. I was just playing with you. But I've lost interest, so I decided to reveal my cards. Dustin shrugged his shoulders. So, you were the one who killed my brother. Dahlia was enraged. That's right. I'm the murderer. What do you plan on doing now? Dustin gave her a vague. I'm going to kill you. In her fury, she took out a dagger and aimed it toward Dustin's throat. A slap rang out as Dustin struck Dahlia mercilessly, causing her to fall to the floor. The dagger slipped from her grasp and clattered onto the ground as well. You. Dahlia's face was disfigured. She was about to get up when Dustin grabbed her by the throat and pinned her against the wall. Ugh. Dahlia gasped for breath, and her face flushed red. She struggled to free herself but to no avail. Dustin's grip was like an iron vice that clamped tightly around her neck. How are you planning on avenging your brother with your meager strength? With just one hand, Dustin lifted her off the ground. Why? Dahlia was aghast. She never expected Dustin to suddenly turn hostile and forget about the past relationship. She could even see the intent to kill in his cold eyes. Why? You should ask yourself that. Dustin sneered coldly. Is it fun playing such childish tricks in front of me? Are you tired of living? What nonsense are you spouting? Have you gone crazy? Dahlia was shocked and afraid. So, you're not going to admit it? All right, two can play this game. Dustin snorted and reached out his hand. With a forceful tug, Dahlia's clothes were torn into shreds and revealed her enticing, voluptuous figure. She looked extremely provocative.